Anyways, here's Wonderwall.
Cause
Oh.
maybe.
No, copyright.
Oh my god, we
right,
don't want to
yeah.
get demonetized.
Well, I sung one word. We should be good.
Yeah. Oh.
Oh, okay. On that note, welcome to the Stray Pixels podcast. I am your host, as usual, Noisy Pixel staff writer Colin Buchanan, and I am joined by my co-host, staff writer Nathan Mejia, our still intern Mads, and our do everything Ryuji.
I
How are you guys doing
do it
today?
all anymore because I failed to edit the last episode because Premiere wasn't working, and just recently Windows 11 pushed an update that just fucked my SSDs royally.
Okay,
literally.
You're telling me you don't want to get demonetized, and then you use the F word in the first 2 minutes.
Oh, please.
I'm just saying, that'll get us demonetized much faster than singing copyrighted music.
Well, it depends. It just means I gotta remember to up the age rating a little bit.
Well, what if we sang swear words to the tunes of copyrighted music?
Yeah.
I think that would just be a 30 Rock joke at that point.
I still need to watch that. I saw like the first episode and never got around to the rest.
It's very good. I don't know how well it holds up on a first viewing in today's day and age, because there's a lot of humor that there's not a whole lot of punching down in compared to a lot of other sitcoms of its time. And it's very aware because so 30 Rock now is somewhat notorious because it had an episode where one of the characters did blackface, but it was pause. The point of the joke was that the character that was doing it was stupid and didn't know better. Because they were just that fucking stupid.
Yeah, it's sort of like that episode of The Goodies where they did blackface, but the episode was about how African apartheid was bad.
So it's still not right, but the joke is explicitly not at the expense of black people.
Yeah, I can understand why you would hate it, but
I mean,
it's like Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder, which I'm sure that you haven't seen, but
I saw like 5 minutes of the end of it once, I think. I don't know.
The joke is not at the expense of black people. The joke is at the expense of Oscars or actors who work way too fucking hard to try to get an Oscar.
Yeah.
Oh, particularly method actors for him.
Yeah.
So before we get too deep into it, because I tend to put the call to action at the end of the episode, and I want to ask everybody that is listening a question at the beginning of the episode. So we are coming up on a full year of the Noisy Pixel podcast, the Stray Pixels podcast, excuse me, and we are also potentially considering doing something of a revamp of the show, mostly in terms of the format. So what I have been considering for a while, because we tend to have a lot of people that are really excited about one topic over the other, we're trying some different things behind the scenes in order to diversify things a little bit more. But what I want to hear from you guys, the listeners at home, is do you like the podcast as it is now with this format, and do you want me to try and keep it around? Or would you prefer we do something that's a little bit more similar to integrating the Noisy Newsweek stuff, talking about current events in not quite so deep detail, just so that we can have had a discussion about them? Because I want to make sure that what we're talking about is what you guys want to hear about, and I know a lot of you guys are here to hear what we specifically think, but I do want to make sure that I'm doing what my audience wants to hear, because that's the only way that you're going to grow, is by making sure that you are catering to the people that are listening to you, and making sure that you are doing what's going to spread yourself to the widest possible audience. So
yes,
the intention here would be, rather than doing two deep discussion topics, would be to do the first part of the week. So it's sort of like a last week tonight type deal, where the first part of the week we we talk about things that specifically happened in the past week, and then the second half of the episode would be a deeper dive into one single topic. Would you prefer that over what we're doing now? Do you like what we're doing now? I want to hear from you guys. Talk to us on Twitter. Leave messages under the YouTube video for this episode, assuming that there is one. That was not a dig at Ryuji. That was just logistically, I hope there is one.
Listen, blame Premiere. Don't blame me. Okay?
Just breathe deep. Just
Just remember, it wasn't you. Even if he catches you in the carpet.
But I just wanted to get that out ahead of time, because I want to make sure that the most possible people hear it. I don't know how many of our listeners actually make it all the way to the end of the episode, because that's the other thing. We do quite long episodes, and I do want to know if you guys want to see something shorter, which I think that that format would accommodate, or if you like hearing us go on and on and on and on and on about stuff, which I am more than happy to do, clearly.
I hope everyone still heard that and weren't filtered by the 30 Rock discussion. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
It's fine. I love 30 Rock. And also, listen, we just did an episode where I went on for 40 fucking minutes about Star Wars books. So, I'm just saying, like, there are definitely people here that'll listen to anything, and we love those people, but I also want to know what the people that tune in at the beginning are wanting, especially because, like, I don't have access to our Spotify demographics or information. I only have access to what we have on YouTube, and what we have on YouTube is about 200 to 250 views a week, and I don't know what counts as a view. I don't know how long everybody sticks around, because these episodes don't get heavily commented on, and that's fine. I'm not complaining, but I do want to hear more feedback from our community. So I'm just putting this at the top of the episode rather than waiting till the end.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Especially because our first topic of the week is going to be yet another follow-up, and probably the final one of the year, on the very first thing that we talked about on this podcast, which is the PlayStation Plus revamp and the current state of PS Plus Premium. So over the last couple of months, I believe we last checked in on this in either early October or late September.
I think it was late September,
we've seen a veritable cornucopia of games coming to PS Plus Extra. That is not a concern at all. By the time that you guys are watching this or listening to it, almost the entire Kingdom Hearts series minus Remind will be on PS Plus Extra. Wow. The entire Yakuza series will be available on the service as a whole, which is absolutely insane, and I love it. A massive number of Assassin's Creed games, basically everything except for the original game, will be available.
Seems like a weird omission.
The original game has never been remastered or remade.
Yeah, it's only a PS3 game, so it would have to be a streamed thing.
Weird.
And there's also, I believe, the Dragon Quest games, because there's Builders 2, 2 Musou games. I think it was Dragon Quest Heroes and also 11.
Yeah.
Also, PSA, go play Dragon Quest Builders 2 on PS Plus. It's one of the best games ever made.
It's definitely better than Minecraft.
No balls. It is straight up one of the best games ever made. I am not overselling it.
Even if the story can be a little predictable.
But unfortunately, we finally, so obviously we got our update for what games are coming to the extra and premium tiers this month a couple of days ago as of recording this, and it is about what we all feared. So a couple weeks ago was the 20th anniversary of Ratchet and Clank, and at that point they announced, so all of the Ratchet and Clank PS3 games that we are missing, including the whole original trilogy that was remastered and put on PS3, is coming to PS Plus Premium. And then it turned out that those were the only games coming to PS Plus Premium this month. And last month we got all the Sly games back, but all of these games were already available on PS Now and were removed prior to the revamp.
Yeah.
And they are also all PS3 streaming.
Yep.
Wow.
So...
yeah, this is why no matter how good a subscription service gets, especially for games, I'm just not interested, because they're gonna remove stuff, they're gonna delist stuff, shuffle stuff around. I prefer to have like a game that I own and can hold in my hands.
That's completely understandable. That is one of the reasons why I am on the record as not really liking Game Pass, and I say that as somebody that's probably about to have Game Pass now that I'm about to have a much better gaming PC in the near future.
Yeah,
but I totally feel that.
I say it all depends on the region you live in, so that's a topic for another time on how it's worth.
Well, sure. I know that the Japanese catalog is better in that it like the problem is that the Japanese catalog includes a lot of games that did not come out outside of Japan.
Yeah.
So like you have the whole Trails series effectively. And several of those releases did not come out outside Japan. We only just saw Trails from Zero come out on PS4. So that's definitely not going to be on Plus anytime soon, frustratingly. And I don't think any of the Cold Steel games are, if I remember correctly.
I don't remember either.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. They're too niche, even though we got some Eves up on there.
Yes, we do.
I know 9 for sure, and I think maybe
I think the PlayStation
PS4
4
8?
version of 8 is on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
This isn't
PlayStation 4
confusing at all.
version.
Yeah,
No PS5
the
version.
recently released PS5 version, go check out Bailey's review, creates yet another issue of the version of a game on PS Plus, previously PS Now, not being the definitive version, because still there are a lot of titles that are PS3 streaming on PlayStation Plus that have PS4 versions that are not on PS Plus.
Yes, which makes Yakuza a very good footnote, is that it is a remastered version, so it's on the PS4, not the PS3 versions, which would really suck if it was Yakuza 3, because Yakuza 3 here in America famously had a ton of cut content.
And it's really frustrating because the Yakuza Remastered collection is on the premium tier for some reason, because they're still not really they've still not really defined what's supposed to go on premium as opposed to extra, because they say, oh, remastered older titles, but then there are other remastered titles that are on the extra tier.
Yeah.
Inexplicably.
Well, I mean, basically, it's about what they think they can get away with making you spend money on.
Exactly.
Yeah, personally, I'm surprised that like I continue to happily pay only for extra, and premium still feels like a scam to me. Even on Japanese territory, like they still keep adding these good games to the extra tier. Now we have Kingdom Hearts, Dragon Quest, and everything else. It just makes me think, what's the point of getting premium? Because sure, PS3 games, but those are streams. So if you don't have a good internet connection, sucks to be you.
And sometimes even if you do, because I was playing Sly 2 a couple days ago, and I had to playing it flawlessly, had no problems, no stutters, no nothing. I got up to pee, came back, and all of a sudden my connection had tanked and I was forcibly disconnected.
Yeah. It depends, because I don't know how they're doing it anymore, but I know now used to be just a PS3 in a warehouse somewhere streaming your game.
Yeah, they're still on literally racks of PlayStation 3s.
Yeah.
It's not like literal consoles, but like it's all the motherboards and hardware from PlayStation 3s that are streaming to your home.
Yeah, and this is because much like the PlayStation 2, it has certain hardware that makes it very hard to emulate for.
Yeah, it's that cell chip, right?
Yeah, it's that cell chip. Whereas PS2 had the Emotion engine, something like that.
Yeah,
it did.
Yeah.
It did.
Which is why Silent Hill 2 is screwed up on anything but a PS2 or PC.
And why MGS4 has never gotten a port.
Yep.
And
it's
did they ever fix the thing? I believe when PS3 games were introduced, they ran at 720p. I don't know if that's still a thing, because I never.
Well, the PlayStation 3 itself runs at 720p. There is an extremely limited list of games that run at 1080 on the PS3.
Yeah, and I think Final Fantasy 13 was one of the few that did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And boy, were we punished for it, because especially as you get further, 13.2 is okay. Lightning Returns, I revisited a couple of months ago on PS3. The frame rate is dog shit.
Yeah, the game doesn't run that well.
I can't help but admire games that try way too hard and end up with shitty performance.
Like it's so frustrating.
It's not great, but you're trying so hard. You're exploiting the hardware. I love it.
Because you could make a decently performing version of Lightning Returns today, like with exactly the same graphics, and you could convince me that it was at least a late gen PS4 title. It is an incredible looking game that runs like absolute ass on the original platforms that it was launched on. and it has a PC port, but that PC port kind of blows.
Mm.
Because I think it's locked at 30, if I remember correctly, which is ridiculous.
I only remember like horror stories about the PC ports of like anything from the PS3 generation, especially Type 0. I've seen it on sale multiple times, but then many people say don't buy it. It's not going to work on your modern PC because of some permissions that Windows has that screw it up.
Square has never been that great at PC ports. There's always a little bit of fixing that needs to be done, but that's getting off topic.
Yeah.
I still remember having to play both Nier Automata and Star Ocean 4 on PC using I don't remember what tool it was called. It was a tool made by a fan that like helped fix the frame rate in Nier by disabling stuff like the bloom, so you could run it even on hardware that isn't like up to par with the requirements. I don't remember what was the name of that tool.
All I'm hearing is that people should just get a Switch to play the best version of Nier Automata. That's all I'm hearing.
Clearly.
And various Final Fantasy
Show
ports.
it to me, Nate.
Oh,
I know you have it.
I have it, but not right next to me. It is unfortunately on my bed.
Who are you and what have you done with my co-host? The Nate I know has it at arm's length at all times.
I know. It's a shock. I'm myself shocked and appalled, but I let it run out of battery.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievably, yes. I let it run out of battery.
This is outrageous.
But
there we go. Mad's coming through for me.
Yeah.
I've got you covered. Let's see. I don't... Automata, but
well,
I guess
we ran out of stuff to talk about.
No, we did not.
No, we did not.
We did not.
Anyway,
There's
sorry,
definitely
yeah,
still stuff to talk about. We just got sidetracked.
Yeah, we got very sidetracked.
Sorry, turning it off.
The problem here is that the question that I've been asking is it worth it? And I think that by this point the answer is resoundingly no.
No.
Yeah, my answer continues to be extra is worth it. In the Japanese territory, premium is not worth it, no matter the territory. It continues the same.
Well, extra is, I think, worth it regardless of where you live.
Extra is definitely worth it because there's a lot of stuff on there, even if you're just buying it for the Ubisoft stuff, because you got Far Cry 3 on there too, the remastered one. So you got a ton of stuff there to play. It's just that premium. Like, if I want original Resident Evil, I could go play original Resident Evil everywhere.
See, and like the corollary question to that is, what could Sony do within reason to improve it? Because what I don't want to see is games being held back from the extra tier to be put into premium, like the Yakuza Remastered collection very obviously was. Because I don't feel like the promise of premium is being fulfilled by what Sony is currently offering. It feels much more like the way that Nintendo handles NSO with its extreme slow drip feed of content.
Hey, at least with Nintendo, you know what you're getting.
Yeah, but my answer is a much more resounding. It's not worth it at all. Like, what can Sony do to improve it? Not much, because I don't think they have much incentive to. Because if they can get away with making you spend like a higher tier of money, they're going to want to.
Well, okay, so we're not going to see the ramifications of well, actually, no, technically we have already. The service itself has lost 2 million subscribers since the relaunch. And I think that we're going to see even more ramifications as time goes on and as people's prepaid service starts to run out and they have to start considering what tier they want to re-up at. Yeah. Because right now, PS Plus is still maintaining a massive lead over Game Pass. But as time goes on, if they don't turn this ship around, you're going to start seeing a lot like smaller revenue coming in for Sony. Because right now, revenue is still technically up despite the subscriber loss because a lot of people are paying at a higher tier than they were before. But that's not going to be the case forever if premium continues to languish the way that it is in being completely unnecessary, particularly when a lot of these months that go by, the games that we get are games that Sony decided to pull from the service before the relaunch just so that they could pad out empty space. Yeah. And it's frustrating because there are games that we know are supposed to be coming to this service, and we've known that for months because they're in the PSN backend. that are not there.
Yeah.
Like we've been told over and over again, oh, somebody was able to download Dino Crisis or Dino Crisis 2 or Parasite Eve, and yet these games are not on the platform for some reason. They just don't show up, or they only show up in specific regions.
Yeah.
And not where most of, like, frankly speaking, where most of the fan base is.
Yeah.
Because the largest install base for these platforms is America. And it's frustrating that other regions are getting games that people really want to play, and we're just straight up not getting them, and with no reason given.
Yeah. Because usually a lot of the time the reason is some kind of rights manager thing is over here. But yeah, I agree. I think if they were to merge all regions, that would help at least. Not keep this weird division. I understand, like, for stores that why the division stands. But for this, they should make sure if a game can't launch everywhere, to make sure it can launch everywhere and then launch at the same time. Another one thing would be, where's Legend of the Dragoon, Sony? Where is it? I mean, we got Ape Escape, which is cool.
They still haven't fixed Ape Escape 2.
Yeah.
It's still a travesty on PlayStation 5.
Yeah, I tried playing Psychonauts, the original, recently, and that game's hot garbage. Holy crap.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it barely runs.
Sorry. But speaking of regions, I think one of the reasons I'm not too hot on subscription services is like the few games that are locked to streaming, and Australian Wi-Fi is famously not that great.
Yeah.
I've actually almost dropped out of this Zoom call. A few times.
I noticed, and I was too polite to say anything.
Yeah, no, I'm fine now. It's stabilized, but I'm good.
Yeah. No. Even here in America, which has better Wi-Fi than Australia, like, we're still nothing compared to fucking Japan or Korea. Those countries that were able to get the infrastructure there. So these services work fantastically over there, and the cloud stuff on Switch works fantastically over there.
I mean, this is one of those the problem is capitalism things, because the reason why companies in America don't have any incentive to get better is because all of the internet service providers in America have eked out little monopolies depending on where you live. So you only have at most 2 wired connection options. There's a lot of companies that are coming out with like 4G Wi-Fi now, but that's not good enough for anything more than basic use. So if you have more than 2 people using the internet in your place of residence, or you need to do anything that requires consistency, it's not going to be enough.
Yeah.
So these companies keep each other out of like they've all got turf. Other companies are prevented from muscling. So if you guys, let me. Do you mind if I take you on a tangent for a second? I know Matt.
No, go ahead. I'm interested.
So a couple of years ago, this was almost 10 years ago now, Google attempted to start a fiber optic internet service provider company that showed a lot of promise in the areas that they tested in, but attempted to expand into more territories and ran into legal issues with internet service providers that were already there, because those providers had lobbied to create laws and ordinances that said that no one was allowed to move their cables on power lines in order to make room for other cables. So basically, in order for Google to move into territories, they would have to convince existing internet service providers to go out and move their own cables on power lines, which obviously they were not at all incentivized to do, because they were then going to lose customers to Google. So it's one of those things where, like, this shit happens all over the world. And that's one of the things that is keeping everybody from having stable internet and keeping services like this from working. Not to discount the fact that, unfortunately, Sony's streaming service is just not set up for success because it's running off of PlayStation 3s. It's not running off of like hardware that was designed from the ground up.
Yeah, it's not running on a dedicated server. Essentially, it's just,
so you're just getting screwed from both ends of this equation.
Yeah.
And you know, I was going to mention a bit ago, but places like Japan having better internet is also just because they're a more densely populated country that's
Yeah.
you know smaller than America.
Yeah,
So
if
it's
you
just
go out to the
easier.
countryside, it's bad.
Yeah. So it works better overall because there's a lot of dense population.
Yeah.
If let's be clear, if all of the games that were being streamed on PlayStation Plus Premium worked flawlessly 100% of the time, it would be an amazing service.
Mhm.
Like, that catalog is massive.
Yeah.
It shrank a bit, but it's getting back up to where it was when PS Now was still a thing.
Yeah.
And the list of games is frankly incredible, but it's all hampered by the fact that you have to stream it. So even if apparently you have a really good wired connection, there's just no guarantee that it's going to work right.
Yeah. Because I mean, there are games on there right now that are re-releasing soon. Like Record of Agarest War is already on the PS Plus Premium. People can play it right now, but I doubt they're going to want to with that service. Even me, I could sit there and play it right now, and I'm still going. I'm just wait for the Switch version. It'll be much better.
I mean, you know, it would be even better than that. Buying Tactics Ogre Reborn and playing a good game.
Does it have big anime titties? Because if the answer is no, I'm sorry.
No, you cannot make baby.
You also can't
what's
use
even
the
the point?
default name of the team because it contains the banned word.
So I don't understand how this problem is being run into, because that was not the word that was the default company name when I played, and I played on launch day, was Blackstone. I did not run into this problem.
Huh.
Yeah.
So I have to wonder if this was a problem in a pre-release build that was patched.
Or maybe because particularly it said it was flame scale.
Yeah.
Particularly. Is that the default name, or is Blackstone the default name then?
Maybe they've got like a few presets that they.
Okay.
I don't know. This is just a guess. I haven't actually played it myself.
It's one of those cases where like a lot of games have a bastard sword, but then censor the word bastard in their chat, so you can't say the name of the item.
Yeah.
I remember playing Kingdom Hearts Union Cross, which was a big mistake. I hate gacha games. But its chat filter was
they said in front of Ryuji.
Yeah, sorry. The chat filter was a bit overzealous and would block words like orichalcum despite it being a crafting material because of the last three letters. Yeah, it's got cum in it, so it would let you write it out, but the last three letters would be censored, like orichalcum.
Yeah, I can tell you programmatically why that's happening.
Oh yeah, for sure. I understand why it's happening, but it's hilarious.
Yeah, it's
okay,
bad regex.
I
it's
actually
bad
want you
regex.
to tell me why, because is it because it's just is it a simple like if equation?
Yeah, it's literally just looking for a string of letters that are C-U-M. It's sometimes called the Scunthorpe problem because that's a town in Britain that has a C-U-N-T embedded in it, which means a lot of forum web filters, especially in the early days of like forums and stuff, would catch that word because it's got a bad word in it.
In America, we call it the Penn Island problem.
Ah, yes.
Penis
land.
It's
pretty good.
This just recently, Madison Empire told me that like you can't trade Bulbasaur unless you nickname it because the SAU is actually a German curse word, and I learned that today. Did not know that.
Yeah,
so
Pokemon especially runs into the problem because it's got global trade, which means it's got to account for you trading to someone in Germany, which actually gets their own Pokemon names. They're one of the European countries that gets a localization.
Yeah.
We've gone way off track, but I do have a funny instance of this happening before we roll over into the next topic. So I used to play Mabinogi, which is a free-to-play online game that was the idea of it was that it was it was a Celtic inspired anime story that had a lot of mythological influences, but was meant to be like fantasy life. So you could do all kinds of things in it, but every arc of the story was either an original story or an adaptation of a pre-existing tale from history. So at one point they were doing stories that were adaptations of Shakespeare stories, and one of those was The Merchant of Venice. And obviously one of the characters in The Merchant of Venice is named Shylock. You could not say the word Shylock in game chat because it is technically a slur against Jewish people.
Yeah. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That.
Yeah.
So you could not discuss the plot of the game in the game because one of the characters' names would get censored out.
Yeah, that's
Oh god.
not quite enough thinking through the player experience there.
Anyway, any final thoughts on PS Plus Premium?
Premium.
Don't get it. It's still a scam.
Don't get
PS
it.
Plus Extra
No.
is still better.
Don't get subscription services. Own things. Buy physical copies. Hold a box in your hand.
Which again is fine, but these services do work out cheaper for people like me who don't have a lot of money to spend on physical games anymore.
They work out cheaper in the short term, but when the service goes down, you spent money on nothing.
Yes.
Well, you spent money to access a thing. Like, here's the thing: if I get Game Pass and I play through, let's say Halo 4, I don't know, I'm just picking a game out of a hat. If the service shuts down, I will still have played through Halo 4. Like, if I got my fill of that game, it doesn't really matter that I don't own it if it's a thing that I'm not going to go back to, you know?
Like, I guess I just. Yeah,
I understand where you're coming from. I am a fiend for physicals.
Look, if it works for you, do get a subscription service you like. I can't stand them. I don't like it.
I get it. I do get it. One of my primary critiques of Game Pass has been that Microsoft is trying to erode actual game ownership, like end user ownership of games. So I stand by that. But there are uses, there are consumer friendly benefits. There's just also problems, and especially if the company doesn't want to actually, keep up their end of the bargain and keep adding things.
There is a lot of things. Anyways, what I was going to say about Premium is that it's fine. I mean, get it if there's a couple games interesting on you for like a month or two, play through them, burn through them fast, and then just go back down to extra or essential.
But here's the thing, you can't. If you are paying annually for PlayStation Plus, you can't pay for a couple months of a higher tier. You have to convert your entire remaining subscription time to that higher tier.
Yeah, but I don't buy annually. I will, maybe I do, but a lot of people pay monthly, from what I understand.
Yeah,
a lot of people do pay monthly. If you're paying monthly, obviously you can change it at any time. But if you pay annually, Sony will not let you buy a la carte months of extra or premium. You have to convert the entire rest of whatever your subscription time is.
Yeah.
So I guess the advice is buy monthly.
See, if it's worth it, like paying monthly, you are paying like twice as much.
Generally,
yeah, but it's technically more flexible, I guess. It's a mess.
So like, here's the other thing is that like technically you get a better value even if the service is not as good for paying annually. Like, I'm playing devil's advocate now, but like if I paid $120 for a year of PlayStation Plus Premium and I considered like only how much I was getting for premium, it's not the worst thing because I'm only paying an extra couple dollars a month over what I would have paid for extra effectively, because extra I think is $90 a year and then premium is $120. So effectively that's only like an extra $2-something a month, which isn't the worst, but I do understand both sides of this. Ryuji, how about you before we move on?
Well, I have nothing. Like, Madison hates subscription services, and I'm here just looking at my Japanese account. I still have it until January. My Brazilian account already expired, so I'm basically just like, you said like paying monthly you can't do that for sure. But for me, I wonder where I fall because I usually get those gift cards that give you like 3 months, and I just
Yeah.
store them for whenever I have like the itch to play a game in the catalog. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Whatever works, I guess.
Yeah.
That's
Whatever works, yes, because in my case it's not because of the internet, it's because good luck finding physical copies of games here because
yeah,
Sony
that's
said
fair.
Sony gave us the middle finger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was yet another discussion about PS Plus. We're probably not
I
going to
want to
talk
go
about it
back to
again until
talking
next
about
year.
30 Rock.
I agree. Topic number 2 should be 30 Rock instead of the other annoying thing we're about to talk about. That's going to make me have to swallow a lot of my pride. So
I'll wait to see that.
we will be right back with a discussion about my real dad and how he fucked up.
Hey,
See you guys in a minute.
We're talking
Okay.
about daddies?
I just said something unmonetizable, so it's a good thing
Yeah.
that Nate didn't start recording until after I had said it.
Oh, I made sure.
Yeah.
All
Don't
Wish
right.
I didn't have to
worry.
hear that, but I guess I
All
did
right.
now. Yeah.
Welcome back, everyone. In the first half of this week's episode, we discussed whether PS Plus Premium is still worth it, because this is a thing that we have to keep talking about. In the interim between recordings, I made a joke because Nate said something funny, and Mads is now traumatized. And now in the second half of this week's episode, we are going to discuss my problematic father. So last week, some people were given permission to reach out to Naoki Yoshida, very famously the effectively the runner of the show behind both Final Fantasy 14 and 16, about diversity in Final Fantasy 16.
Yeah.
And he did an oops. He did a big old oops. And he said, well, see, it's a European fantasy game. And so realistically, it was never going to be as diverse as the modern world. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to break down the benefits of the doubt and the reasons why that's not good enough. Because okay, the benefit of the doubt. He's not technically right, but he is correct in what people would normally expect to see when you imagine a story that is set in a world that is heavily based on medieval Europe.
Yep.
Like, the average person just does not really picture anyone that isn't white.
Yes, and without British accents.
Right.
Because that's what we're trained
German
to
wasn't
see.
invented. German wasn't invented until
Well,
later.
neither was Spain.
It didn't come out.
Only people who speak Spanish are Mexicans.
It didn't come out till the later. Right? No, the patch notes. If you look at the patch notes of history.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, our water is now, I think, 1.25 denser than it was last year.
Someone consult the history of the entire world, I guess, and we can find out.
I hope I still have it. It's this Bill Bryson book called.
Oh no, my illusion is shattered.
Oh, crap! Yes,
I still think
I'm in Xenoblade. That's real.
I still think it's cooler because in my head it's just a portal that's falling right behind Madison. But every time I return,
it's attached to the back of my chair, which is easy to set up but kind of annoying.
Yeah. I think it's a cool effect. I can see how some of these illusions would be shattered. Much like seeing a black man in feudal Japan.
Right, like that samurai guy.
Yeah.
They did that anime about him.
Yeah, I haven't watched it. Should I? Was it good?
I keep hearing it was really good, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I should see it then.
That one, I hear Afro Samurai is actually also really good, and it's kind of loosely based off the same person.
And it has Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh, well, that's worth checking out.
Yeah.
He's got a nice voice.
So like I do get why, let's say even 10 years ago, this would have been a completely acceptable answer. to the population at large.
Yes.
Like, whenever people introduce people that aren't white into stories that have this setting, you're always going to get the people that scream that they went woke and that they're perverting the idea of what history tells us, which is not true. But we saw discourse that was relevant to this actually somewhat recently when the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles came out, because a very annoying recurring plot point in the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles is how goddamn racist a lot of people are to the two Japanese leads when they're in England. The lead prosecutor almost never uses the main character's name. He almost always refers to him by his race.
Which, while problematic, that's kind of how it was back then.
It's kind of how it was, but it's a little much. It's
discongruently heavy compared to how Ace Attorney normally is.
Yes.
And, like, it's doing it on purpose, but it can still be a bit much.
Yeah.
Especially because I don't know that this character is meant to come across as a completely unredeemable asshole. Well, because, like, I think that he's supposed to have the same vibe as a lot of the prosecutors from the original series. But the problem is that, people that have a distinctly anti-racist perspective, which a lot of people in America do have, are going to see the way that this guy treats people of other races and just consider him to be completely unredeemable, clearly a hardcore bigot. And so it's this problem with applying, like going back and using what would have been common,
vernacular.
Yes, and continuing to use it in modern games. Is it accurate? Yes. Does that make it better? No.
Yeah, which is distinctly different, I should mention, from books written in that time period using that vernacular being pushed forward.
It's a modern game, but set in the past and borrowing that language.
Yeah. But a lot of people don't see the difference between those two different stuff, so I just want to make sure people know it's like we're not talking about games. If a game was made in the 1800s using that word, it would be different.
Ye oldie Ace Attorney, the original from 1800. I love that one.
Yay, barely eat your hamburgers, Nick.
No, and I think it's also important to say that this example is also different from the Yoshi P thing, because while a lot of people have the image of medieval Europe being very white, that's mainly just because of stories and movies released after that show it as very white. And obviously it was a majority white population, but the idea that there wouldn't be any black people is more of a modern invention.
And I think it's based a lot on Tolkien's work too.
Yeah, because he's like very specifically trying to create a myth for England. And the this might be a bit off topic.
A little bit, but I'm interested.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, he was basically sad that England, like the Britain, didn't have its own myth, unlike Celtic mythology or anything like that. So he was trying to sort of put a lot of myths together in a blender, slurry it up, and say, look, this is sort of a constructed myth that could have been some sort of origin story of our British society, sort of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
This all kind of leads into the middle ground, which is people that are defending this decision specifically because they claim that we are holding Japanese stories to Western standards. And this kind of falls into the the rhetoric of East versus West, first of all. Because frankly, and this should not be a hot take, it is very infantilizing to assume that people that are not white don't understand
Yeah.
don't understand issues like this.
Yeah, especially with Japan, who is getting more progressive now than it has ever been.
Or at least, progressive discussions are sort of becoming more out in the open rather than.
Exactly. So I would have a little more faith in him, and if he said straight up, I was afraid of not being able to write a character of a different diversity authentically enough.
Sure,
Yeah.
because like Square itself has run into this problem. When Barrett was originally written in Final Fantasy VII, he was a caricature of black people.
Yes, his character was he is the black man, and it still kind of retained a little bit of that in the remake, but it was more humanizing at the very least.
I love him in the remake because he's this big scary black man, but it's because he's a revolutionary eco-terrorist, and then his sunglasses come off and he's this lovely dad.
Yeah, for me, he always came off in the remake more of what I would think of as a black preacher.
Yeah, that's actually a good comparison. Yeah,
because when he's in this in the very beginning, when he's in the elevator with Cloud, he goes like, "Are you telling me you don't hear the cries of the planet?" And he turns around, "I know you do." It
Testify, that sort of
and that brings a whole new vibe of this character where he 100% believes in everything he's doing because he wants to make a better world for his daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's so good in remake. I love him a lot.
He is.
I was also going to say that Yoshi P did an oopsie, but I don't think he's trying to be racist on purpose. It's just that this sort of narrative that Europe was white is sort of just generally accepted, even though it's wrong. Mm-hmm. So it's an oopsie, but I get it.
Which is funny because in Final Fantasy 14, the other thing he does some Middle Eastern to Indian cultures very well with it, and I'm sure it's also a big thing about his writers that with him. But he has been shown to put more diversity and more influences from other cultures into Final Fantasy 14 in a very authentic way.
That, other than the whole infantilization argument, is the other problem with arguing that you can't hold Japanese studios to Western standards because previous Final Fantasy games have done fine at this. Final Fantasy 12 is this high fantasy experience, but it's actually fairly diverse, diversely designed characters. And sort of Rabanasta is this desert kingdom. It's pretty well done.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy 13 has Saz, who is black and does not have really any sort of stereotypes associated with him. No. He kind of just happens to be black, and that's one of the that's not necessarily the ideal representation, but it is an ideal of representation to have diversity in your cast and not have it be the entire point, just to have it be a thing that is normal. And that's kind of part of the other problem though, because I'm looking back at Final Fantasy 14. I love Final Fantasy 14. Obviously I do. I gave Endwalker a 10 out of 10, but the entire main cast is at least white presenting.
Yes, they are.
And we have not had, and it appears that we are going to continue to not have, a black main character in a Final Fantasy game since Final Fantasy 13, which came out, I think, in 2008.
Oh, ouch.
No, 13 was 2010, I think.
Was it 2010?
Yeah.
You get my point, though.
No, I get your point.
I mean, that's still 12 years. They've
had many opportunities, especially considering how many new characters get brought in every expansion of 14. How many new characters got introduced every time they change the story up in 15. It's a problem, and it's like playing Opera Omnia and having all these characters intermingled with each other. You really get a perspective of they're all mostly kind of similar looking, aren't they? That's not great.
There's a lot of things, and especially since I think it's always very interesting too that there's not a lot of Asian presenting characters either.
That can be a sort of a thing Ace Attorney. The characters are drawn. It's sort of a thing with anime art styles where a character drawn to be Asian, the localization can very just easily make them white just because of the way the art style makes them look.
In that art style, characters that look Asian and characters that look white don't look meaningfully different from each other, which isn't. I'm not that almost sounds racist if you take it the wrong way, but I'm not trying to say that like they have to look different from each other, but I am
No.
saying that like that is the reason why Ace Attorney was localized the way that it was because like
or
there
at least
wasn't anything
the way it was able to be localized that way.
While the setting was very obviously and hilariously Asian, none of the characters were super identifiably Asian except for the stereotypical elements of them that went with the setting. So, for example, the whole spirit summoning thing is very rooted in.
I remember hearing that they actually wrote the first game to be more easily localizable, which is why a lot of the spirit medium stuff doesn't become it becomes way more overt starting from the second game. Like in terms of Japanese aesthetics.
When you get the Magatama.
And you go to Kurain Village and it's like, oh, this is a Japanese town with a bus stop. Like, okay.
It's this kind of brings us around to the other end, like the full other end, which is that it really does not matter what was realistic at the time, because the hesitation to create more diverse stories has a measurable impact in I unfortunately am not subscribed to the New York Times, but the Kotaku article which heavily inspired this podcast topic, which is entitled "We Need to Start Holding Japanese RPGs to Higher Standards," references an article from the New York Times that lists Hollywood having basically missed out on about $10 billion in revenue due specifically to a hesitation to introduce more diversity in casts. And you look at properties like the Marvel Cinematic Universe taking 20 movies before they finally had one movie about a woman.
That's
insane.
You can see diversity as sort of like big corporations shuffling tokens around to get their first ever gay character or whatever, and in a cynical view that can be it. But at the other time, sometimes representation is really nice. Like I know that I got into Guilty Gear Strive directly because of Bridget. So it can be done poorly, but it's nice to see it done.
It's like. It's kind of ridiculous because Captain Marvel obviously had a massive hatedom the moment that it was announced.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very famously it did. But then it went on to make $1 billion at the box office.
Yeah.
And then Black Panther also cleared $1 billion at the box office, was a media sensation, and was like Disney was trying to get it in the running for Best Picture that year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now today, we're recording this the day after Black Panther 2 had its wide release, and Disney has another upcoming movie called Strange World that features its first central gay character whose queerness is a key part of their narrative, and Disney has buried this movie. I have seen trailers for it in theaters. I've seen a couple YouTube ads for it, and that's about it.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're scared of getting made fun of for the whole Disney's first gay character thing again.
Like it could be, but that I almost think that's part that like if what Disney was doing this completely normal marketing blitz that like they would do for any old picture, and then just having that be an element of the story that was not heavily promoted beforehand, I would be here for that, because that is part of the problem that all of these companies run into, is by advertising their bold new step forward in diversity. When referencing my earlier point, we win when they stop feeling the need to do that.
Yes. When it's been normalized enough that it's just like, it's a movie and it happens to blah blah blah.
And like to kind of tie back to my previous point, like we also win when it becomes something that like it doesn't even necessarily like make a huge difference in the story. Like we can have these stories that are specifically about someone, experiencing racism or having struggles because of their race or because of their queerness or because of their identity.
Yeah.
Like I just a couple weeks ago I saw the film Till, which is a basically a biopic of the mother of Emmett Till, who was very famously lynched in America in the 1950s and was a key basically a key moment in the beginning of the American Civil Rights Movement.
Yes.
And it's phenomenal. It's probably going to go up for Best Picture. And obviously it is a story that is heavily dependent on the race of the characters in it.
Yes.
But we also win when we have characters like Saz who are not like whose entire story and struggle does not revolve around their race. They are simply a person that exists in a story.
Yes.
I've sort of heard it described as like if you set out to make like you sit down and you go, okay, I'm gonna make a story about a gay character because we need more of those. Like that's an admirable goal, but that's not really a story yet. You need to have like a story, a thing to say, a theme to communicate that also has a gay character in it. You know,
exactly.
Like, and obviously it can be worth it. Like if that theme connects to the character being gay directly, that's also worth it. But you can't just say, I'm going to create a gay character. The story needs to have a motivation.
Yes, I get that. And particularly with it, like I was thinking about it recently here in America, these aren't great people, by the way, but Charlie Sheen and his father, Martin Sheen. You guys realize they're Hispanic and of Latino descent, correct?
Yep.
I didn't know that, no.
Yeah. Martin Sheen changed his name from, I think it was, because I know Charlie Sheen is Carlos. And I can't remember what Martin Sheen is right now in my head. I want to say it was like something, but it doesn't really matter. But they felt like they had to change their names to even make it here in America back when especially Martin Sheen was coming up. You know, and they're not great people, but you know, it sucks because I think right now for Mexican representation, we had Carlos Mencia, who, you know, famously stole jokes.
Oh, not a great look.
George Lopez, who stole a kidney from his ex-wife, excuse me. You know, I think right now we have Gabriel Iglesias, who, as far as I know, hasn't done anything wrong, or the singer, something other Iglesias.
Enrique
Iglesias, who's also the but like, it's sad that after those people, I have to kind of struggle to think of representation for Mexicans. And yes, I don't look Mexican. I don't look white as fuck. You know, but people don't think I grew up going to quinceañeras. I grew up like you know, and like as simple as Miles Morales waking up and going, "Hi, mama," and you hear, I don't hear mama, I hear mama.
Yeah.
And then she goes, "Oy, mijo," you know, it reminds me of when I was young and I'd wake up and go to my nana, my tío, my tías, and they would be like, "Oy, mijo, come here," you know.
No, I absolutely understand that. Like, representation, when you see it like get done right, can be really fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm Australian, and it's not like there's a shortage of Australian characters or well-known Australians, but it feels like it's very rare to see an Australian written by Australians. Like, it's always like the Crocodile Dundee type, rather than, you know, what I see day to day. And
if I can kind of go back for a second to Final Fantasy 13, Final Fantasy 13 has two characters, Fang and Vanille, who are coded Aboriginal.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like they have Australian accents and everything, even in the dub. And that's also an important thing to show, Australian Aboriginals. Like I say there's not a shortage of Australians, but I think there is a shortage of our, you know, native Aboriginal Australian population.
Yeah.
Vanille, unfortunately, looks very white, but both of them are at least a little bit darker than the rest of the white looking cast. So yeah, and their clothing also very heavily gives it away. But
oh, that's awesome.
It's one of those things where, like, even if you're doing coding it's still something.
Yeah.
Like if your story is set in a place that is not Earth, you can still write characters that are very obviously intended to represent other cultures.
Yeah.
And even if your story is set on Earth, like you can have characters be diverse just because that's the way that your imagination works. And it's frustrating that a writer that I respect this much has just like limited the way that he thinks about characters in such a way that clearly he obviously associates characters specifically with the region that they come from, which is why you have like the characters that are coded Middle Eastern or Indian in Final Fantasy 14 is because they come from an entirely different region and they almost all live in that region, as opposed to like his setting being more of a melting pot. And it is when you look at like, the literal fantasy races. But not when it comes to, the skin color of the Hyur population, which represents most of the world.
Yeah, like borders are fake. Migration and immigration has always been a thing. And
it's one of those things where like you can just write into your story that things are like this. It's
exactly.
Like one of the things that I always argue about whenever fucking Rising of the Shield Hero comes up is people defend the author's use of slavery because the setting of the story is based on a time period where slavery existed. And it's like, okay, but that doesn't mean that the author had to put slavery in his story, because I don't know if you understand, he's making this up. He can write whatever he wants to.
I always...
No, you don't get it. The character's powers means they have to be naked all the time.
So like with Rising of the Shield and the slavery thing, I always saw it differently than that. I never thought, it was in here because it's a period piece and set in like high fantasy, because a lot of Western high fantasy avoid slavery like the plague, and if
it's uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable, especially for Americans to write about.
Because their books might get banned from schools.
Yes. But the way I always saw it was that it's trying to make a point that the country itself isn't good, and that he could easily just, I want a slave, and just go, pop, here's a slave for you, my guy. What else do you want? You want little girls, you want little boys, we got them.
And that is a perfectly fine opinion to have about a story that does something like that, but the defense of like, oh, it's just how the time period was, that's a defense brought up when someone's like, hey, it's kind of uncomfortable that this story is about slavery, and instead of saying like, well, yeah, it's supposed to be uncomfortable on purpose, they're denying that it could be uncomfortable at all. It's just the way it is, they say.
Exactly.
And that's just a completely inadequate defense to what the person is arguing.
One of the properties that I hold up very heavily when this conversation comes up, and you're going to see a side of me, is Percy Jackson.
Yes,
because so
love those books.
I'm going to really quickly, let's listen to Colin shit on J.K. Rowling again, but the way that the Harry Potter books are written, all of the minority characters are tokens. They are all there either to be made fun of or to be caricatures. You compare that to something like Percy Jackson, where the majority of the books take place in America, and you have a racial diversity of characters that matches that, and they're all diverse just because they are. Like you have central characters that are Black, that are Asian, that are ethnically Greek, and they just are that way, that are neurodivergent because almost all of them are neurodivergent to some degree.
I was going to mention that went back to what I said earlier, like Rick Riordan sat down and he was like, okay, my son has dyslexia and ADHD. I'm going to write a book where that makes him like among the heroes. And then he sort of expanded that and, created the world around it. And I think that's a valid, use of wanting to include something like that.
Because he looked at his son who had, these conditions that people saw as being weaknesses. And he wanted to say, no, people like this, what if they're heroes? Like, what if we made them feel like they could be, they could have potential even greater than the, you know, the supposedly normal people around them, because people that grow up with conditions like mine feel so disempowered by the way that the world speaks to us.
Yeah.
God, yeah.
Like I have an organization whose entire mission, like the most famous organization that speaks on my condition in America, considers it to be something that they want to cure.
Yeah.
And eradicate, yeah.
Autism Speaks is fucking evil.
Yeah, I hate
And
those guys. But
it drives me insane. And so I look at people with goals that are as noble as I want to take these people and I want to make them the heroes of my books, and I'm like, this is incredible. Why are more people not thinking this way?
yeah,
Yeah.
Sorry, Nate. I think I stepped on you.
A little bit, but I was just gonna go
we were gushing, sorry.
Yeah, into it. What was especially what I really like that too is that he doesn't shy away, Rick Riordan, even from putting like trying to mix in Chinese mythology into a Greek mythology or Roman mythology, because one of the characters primarily is a demigod, but his mom also had some ancient Chinese god blood in her, and that made him more powerful.
Yeah.
You know, and it makes a lot of sense now why these characters, main characters, you know, besides it being like a really good story and now normal underdog story, why they're always the ones who are looked down on the most. Frank Zhang is the character I'm speaking about.
Yeah,
is in the beginning
series.
of the book, he is considered the worst Roman there. Like they don't like him. Nobody likes him. But by the end of the book, not only is he probably one of the strongest, but he proves himself to be, you know, the best ally for the Romans, and he eventually becomes a creator, I believe. You know, and it's all really good. I'll sit here and gush about Percy Jackson and Rick Riordan.
Oh, we all will. I think all of us love it here. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm excited for that Disney Plus series that he gets to fucking do.
I'm
finally.
so excited for that.
Yeah.
But like the central thesis here is it does not matter at this point where Yoshida or any writer comes from, especially if they are you know, someone who has as much experience as that and should at this point know better, because this man genuinely, in terms of his ability to write characters and narrative, is one of the best of this generation. But I no balls. And he's not even like, he's not the primary writer anymore, but he has set up all of these pieces that cascade down as the game goes on, and is still the person who is overseeing the entire thing. And he is someone that is so clearly in touch with the people that play his game that this blind spot is just all the more jarring, because we put him on a pedestal, but we also infantilize him at the same time by saying, oh, well, it's because he's Japanese and he doesn't have an American Western sense of wokeness and diversity. And that's bullshit.
Yeah,
that
definitely
is bullshit.
That is definitely bullshit. With it, and I know for some people too that they're afraid of like getting on the other side's angry too. Like they got the racists pissed at them and the left pissed at them because they feel like you put a character in. And I'm like, my whole perspective is I love it to see a character wearing a sombrero and being a little more traditional. The issue always comes in when it's like every character is coming by with a poncho and sombrero and he's got guns on his side. That's when I'm like, okay, that's a little much. But if you just show like love for a culture, that even if it's not your own, because I hate the current movement here in America of if it's not your culture, don't do anything with it. I hate that perspective, because how am I supposed to grow and learn if I'm not even supposed to interact with this other culture? Most predominantly right now, America has this real big problem with cultural appropriation, which I think there's a difference between appropriation and appreciation. Appropriation is taking a taco and going, I made this, and or a burrito, I made this, and calling it a wrap. That's when I'm like, okay, that's appropriation, because you're changing something that was ethnic and just conforming it into a white space.
Flattening it down,
Whitening it down. But if you go through and go, oh, dude, I just went to Mexico and they had this great thing. Oh, what was it called? Oh, yeah, fajita.
And I want to learn to make that.
I'm going to learn
Yeah.
to make that. I love that. Or I'm
Like,
going to learn to make tortilla.
Yeah. I think the most important thing to do, like even when you're writing, outside of your normal experiences, is try to do your research, be willing to ask questions. And if you do something wrong, just sort of accept, okay, that was my bad. It was my first attempt. Listen to criticism.
Yeah.
Because it's not that you can't do anything outside of your culture. It's that you should listen to the people who know best.
Mm-hmm.
When you imagine and create more diverse worlds, even in places where they did not previously exist, you are going to piss off people like the Quartering, like Sargon of Akkad, and they're going to whine and bitch and moan to their shitty and vocal fan bases. But here's the thing: the rest of the world makes fun of those people because they are stupid.
Yeah.
They are people who pretend to be much smarter and much more powerful than they are or will ever be. Yeah. And writing characters that have more like more different experiences or even just more different backgrounds into your stories is only going to bring more people in and make more people interested.
Yeah.
Like, I played a fuck ton of extremely diverse games over the last couple of years of me working at Noisy Pixel, just by virtue of me playing more indie games than I ever have before in my life. Yeah. And almost all of them have been incredible. And I look at the experiences that I would have had if I just played, the limited games that I would have before. And I feel like I would have been missing something that I have gained because I have seen the games that other cultures are making. Yeah. And so even if you're just including someone to be there, just do it. Like, tokenism sucks, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's better than, oh, well, it wasn't realistic for me to have Black people in this setting, so I just don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just the most maddening because, as I keep mentioning, Final Fantasy has already done this correctly. Has already created, and it's in a cast that I think a lot of people look over because they find a couple of the characters annoying. Yeah. And they don't see what all was created in that story and what we could have again if we just hold them to that standard. Because I worry that Square saw the people, the way that people reacted to Final Fantasy 13 and thought that might have been one of the problems.
God, yeah, I'm so worried that they saw Lightning Returns and went, well, I guess they don't want girls anymore, and that's why we've been getting so many boy fests in terms of like main characters in 15 and 16. That's like one of my biggest worries right now.
In fact, even 14 is mostly a male-dominated class, except for two notable exceptions.
I mean, so with 14, like, you yourself can be a female protagonist, and you are the hero of the story. Yeah. So that kind of mitigates it, but I do always say that, like, if you have to make the character diverse, like you, the player, have to make the character diverse, it does not count as an example of diversity. So I'm going to be wishy-washy on that one.
Yeah, I agree with that sort of wishy-washy sentiment.
Yeah. Because I was going to say, because character creators with more options always better. That's all I'm going to say. And you can now.
If you can make Commander Shepard gay, but they have the option of not being gay, it doesn't count as representation.
All I'm saying is that options for the player to make themselves and put themselves in the world is.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm I'm just clarifying my point. But anyway, I want to thank you guys at home for listening to another episode of the Stray Pixels podcast. We post every Tuesday on your podcast app of choice, and hopefully on the Noisy Pixel YouTube channel. What did you guys think of the Final Fantasy 16 news? Who all still has PS Plus Premium? Do you think that it's worth it? Are you getting what you want out of it? What do you want to see that would be reasonable for Sony to actually accomplish? Let us know in the comments on YouTube or on Twitter. If there's anything you'd like us to talk about on a future episode, you can also leave a comment or talk to us on Twitter. You can find me, Colin, at The Arcane Ranger, Ryuji at Ryuji Blades, Madison at @mads_in_0 with 0 spelled out. Nate at less than Nathan, or the site itself at Noisy Pixel News. While Twitter is still around, we'll see what happens in the next couple of months.
Yeah.
The Street Pixels podcast is brought to you by NoisyPixel.net. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers who work hard to bring you the latest news, reviews, previews, podcasts, and more. Please join our community Discord server and talk nerdy with us, and subscribe, follow, and comment to keep up with our future content. We will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.